All right, so this section is going to be focusing on solving rational equations. And if we work through the steps here, the first step is to factor all your denominators if possible. And then determine what your least common denominator is going to be, and we're going to multiply everything in that equation by that least common denominator. So let's take a look at the first problem here. All right, so the 8, we can factor that down to 2 times 2 times 2. The second one doesn't factor, it's simplified as far as it goes. And then we have 2 times 2 times 2 times t. Now, if we think about what our common denominator is here, our denominator needs to have 3 2's. We also need to have a t. This denominator also already has the 3 2's and a t. So 2 times 2 times 2 times t, this will be our common denominator. Now, when you multiply this by the first term, the 3 2's will cancel each other out. What that leaves you with then is t multiplied by the 1 from right here. And that is going to give us just t. All right, so now the second fraction, the t's will cancel out, leaving us with these 2's, which is 8, multiplied by this 2, which is 16. And then the last fraction, everything in the denominator cancels everything right here, leaving us with simply the numerator, which is 17. And then solving for t gives us 1. Now we always want to remember to look at the excluded values. The excluded values for this equation is t cannot equal 0. So since our answer didn't come out to 0, we don't have to worry about that excluded value. Sometimes one of your answers or your answer might end up being this excluded value. If that is the situation, then this cannot be an answer. All right, but in this problem, this is okay. 1 does not give us 0 for a denominator anywhere. All right, let's move on to the next problem. All right, so we want to factor the denominator. All right, so the only denominator that can be factored is going to be our third fraction, and we will factor that by factoring out a 2. So now we are going to multiply by the least common denominator. All right, so our denominator needs to have an x minus 3. All right, so that will be part of our least common denominator. Our denominator, common denominator, would also need to have a 2. So we can get this denominator to be 2 times x minus 3 by multiplying by 2 over 2. This one we could multiply by x minus 3 over x minus 3. This one already has both of those parts, so this is our common denominator. Now when you multiply this by the first fraction, the x minus 3's will cancel. What that will leave you with then is just this 2 multiplied by this x. So we're going to get a 2x right here. Now in the second fraction, this 2 is going to cancel with this 2 over here, leaving you with x minus 3 multiplied by this x. And then over on the last fraction, all of this cancels with both of these, leaving us with just the numerator, which is 6x. All right, so distributing here is going to give us x squared minus 3x. This is quadratic, which means we are going to need to solve by setting this thing equal to 0. And if we set this equal to 0, we'll subtract 6x, giving us 7x. And then factoring out an x. That means x will either equal 0 or positive 7. Both of those answers will give us our solution. Okay? Our excluded value on this is x equals 3. X cannot be 3 because that would cause us to have 0 in the denominator. And since we don't have 3 for an answer, we don't have to worry about the excluded value here. All right, next problem. Everything really is factored as much as we can do it. So the next step is to multiply by the least common denominator. Well, we only have one denominator. It's x. So that is the least common denominator. So distributing, we're going to have x times the 4. Now, x times 1 over x, those are going to cancel, leaving you with just 1. And then 2x times x is 2x squared. All right, so we'll set this equal to 0 because it is quadratic. Normally we would try to factor this problem. However, this problem does not factor. This is a quadratic solution, but it doesn't factor, which means we can solve it by using the quadratic formula, which is negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac over 2a. So in this situation, the b value is negative 4. The a value is 2. And the c value is negative 1. And then over 2 times the 2. All right, so simplify this a little bit. This will come out to be 4 plus or minus square root of 16 plus 8 over 4. And that becomes 4 plus or minus square root of 24 over 4. Now 24, remember, prime factors to 2, 2, 2, and 3. Square roots, we're looking for pairs of numbers, so this is going to be 2 square root of 6 over 4. The 4, the 2, and the 4 are all divisible by 2. So that is going to give us 2 plus or minus square root of 6 over 2 for our final solution here. All right, so the next problem, the denominators are all factored already. Our common factor is going to be, our common denominator rather, is going to be x minus 3 times a 2. This denominator has an x minus 3, it needs a 2. This one has a 2, needs an x minus 3. So those are the two things that our denominator has to have. So distributing, the x minus 3's will cancel, leaving you with 2 multiplied by 4x, and that's going to give us 8x. On the next one, the 2's will cancel, leaving us with x multiplied by the x minus 3. And on the last fraction, the x minus 3's will cancel, leaving us with 12 times the 2, which is 24. All right, so we can distribute the parenthesis, which is x squared minus 3x. This is quadratic, so we're going to set this equal to 0 by subtracting the 24 over here. This does factor down to x plus 8 times x minus 3, which means x is equal to negative 8 or positive 3. However, if you look at your original problem, 3 is the excluded value because 3 would cause your denominator to be 0. That means this is not a valid solution, only x equals negative 8. is a valid solution. All right, so the next one, we want to factor this first fraction. Goes down to x times x minus 1. Take out a common factor there. All right, so then our GCF that we're going to multiply by is going to be x and x minus 1. Now this first fraction, everything cancels in the denominator with everything over here, leaving you with just 2. On the second one, there's no denominator, which means this 1 gets multiplied by all of this, which will give us x squared minus x. And on the next one, the x minus 1's cancel, leaving us with this x multiplied by the 2. Once again, it's quadratic, so we're going to set this equal to 0 by subtracting the 2. It does factor down to x plus 2 times x minus 1, giving us a solution of negative 2 and positive 1. However, once again, 1 is the excluded value from the original problem. And so since our answer cannot include 1, x equals negative 2 is our only solution here. All right, so the next one, everything is factored. We don't have to worry about that. Our common denominator will be x plus 5 times x plus 2. Distributing, we'll get x minus 3 multiplied by x plus 2. Over here you will get x multiplied by x plus 5 because the other parts cancel. Distributing gives you this. And it's quadratic, but what you'll notice is that when you start solving, the x squareds are going to cancel. All right, so really we just need to solve for x. So we're going to add x over here, giving 6x, and dividing is x equals negative 1. And that's okay. It is not one of our excluded numbers, so we're okay with this as our solution.